Welcome back to another episode of Focus on K-12 EdTech and the Education Experience. I'm your host, Doug Konopelko, Education Strategist at CDWG. Today, we continue our esports conversations with Christopher Turner, an esports coach, educator, and so much more from Louisiana. We discuss how esports can be introduced at the younger levels like elementary and middle school, and also how teachers, educators, folks can just get more involved in the esports community. Let's dive in.
My name is Christopher Turner. I'm here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, currently at Southern University Laboratory School in Southern University. Um, Oddly enough, I was a visual artist and a graphic designer. Went to my old high school, donated a piece of artwork, and some kind of way fell in love with education and reaching out to the youth. And here we are, almost 9 years later, and it's been quite a feat and a ride.
Absolutely. So you've got a really eclectic background, a big kind of group of skills and experiences that are pretty unique in this world. But now, you're mainly focused around scholastic esports, right? So most of the work you do now
True.
is focused around that area. So I think people really understand on the professional and collegiate level what it looks like, but maybe struggle, especially when we get down to those younger learners. Right. So, what does esports maybe look like when we think about elementary, middle school students?
You know, I have the pleasure of being here at the laboratory school, which is pre-K through 12, um, and it looks a lot different. You have to kind of meet them where they are. That's what I always say. And so, like, I would say like pre-K through, let's say, fifth grade model. You want to introduce them to like something like coding.org or Minecraft EDU or just free game nights, gaming camps, that type of thing, kind of introductional level type of process. And so, we have to remember too, these games that we're introducing them to is something within the game that they really like, whether it's graphic design, whether it's the coding or the development of the game, or it could just be for soft skills, for communication, teamwork, that type of thing. So it's all about who you have on your staff, what you're able to implement. You can deep dive and go deep into elementary, or you can do the surface things and still have something valuable that the kids would enjoy and that the parents will understand.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the things you mentioned? Minecraft EDU down at the elementary level. What are some of the other things you see at the middle school and elementary school level that folks are using as an introduction to esports?
Well, I mean, you always have gaming camps. You always have gaming clubs where you can kind of start the conversation. Because for us as educators, it's all about the career and college pathways for us. I mean, that's what we're gearing them up to. And so I mentioned staff earlier. So if you had somebody on your staff that's doing robotics or doing coding classes or anything of that caliber, anything STEM or STEAM related. I'm an art teacher by day, so if I can include some kind of design element, and teach them Photoshop or InDesign or something like that to help them along the way with their skill sets and still have a gaming tie-in. I think everybody gets kind of caught up on esports because it's a big thing now. It's a buzzword, but with it wouldn't be esports without the whole gaming umbrella. And so I think the masses have to understand gaming itself is the biggest form of entertainment in the world now. It's bigger than all the other things that we associate with movies, music, any traditional sport. Gaming is bigger than that. All those combined. And so, like I said, it goes back to what I said. I hate to sound like a broken record, but you actually have to meet them where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I think to your point, right, there are a ton of misconceptions surrounding esports, right? So I think that it's this idea that esports is this isolated thing and it's a guy in his 30s living in his mom's basement, usually a white guy. He's drinking Mountain Dew, right? Like all of these things that are really not an accurate depiction of esports, right? But one thing we definitely do see is that white males are generally overrepresented in these spaces. So I know you've talked about some of the opportunities and programs that are out there in the past, but for folks who are trying to bring that equity lens to scholastic esports and that representation, what are some of those programs and opportunities that are out there?
Yeah, it's so easy to plug and play now. You know, there's so many leagues. You know, you have high school esports league, you have NASEF, you have Play VS, and these some of these leagues are accessible to kids that have consoles at home. And so a lot of people, you know, they want to say, hey, it's a technology divide, but when you look at it, the technology divide is actually, you know, the racial color line. You know, it's your urban communities and your rural communities, and so they have little accessibility to broadband, you know, and good Wi-Fi. You know, any gamer knows, you know, Wi-Fi is like a curse. You know, you have to be hardwired. You know, you have to be plugged in, and so, you know, to going back to your question though, I think it's just, you know, as we get further and further within this industry, I was reading a White House initiative yesterday where, you know, it's a part of the infrastructure bill where, you know, you have companies like Apple and Google that promise to, you know, put in hundreds of millions of dollars within the infrastructure of our country. So, you know, it's good to see that type of movement because we know everybody's living pretty much now. And so when you talk about that accessibility, you talk about, you know, what does that look like? You know, you have to make sure that it is accessible. And so, you know, going into it, I mean, you know, it's not too many people of color or minority that's pretty much in my meetings every day. But you know, I think this generation that I'm teaching now is going to be the generation to break that barrier. You know, it's just like any other industry is it's not too young, but it's young enough not to have a diverse type of environment. And so, uh, going back to your previous statements, I think and questions, I think, you know, for the longest time, esports was more PC based, and still is. A lot of the titles are PC based, and so in the African American community or minority communities, consoles was more accessible. It was a cheaper buy-in for us to get into gaming, and so I think it's just going to be a matter of time where PCs are going to get more affordable. They're going to be more accessible. All the consoles are going to catch up to where the PCs are. I mean, think about it. We walk around with a mini computer in our pocket every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of the console and PC side of it as well. That's really interesting. I'm going to ask here. You're involved in so many different things around esports. Maybe give folks just like a few of the current projects, right? In addition to being an esports coach, a few of the other ways that you're involved.
Okay. Well, I'm over gaming camps for the Dallas Mavericks basketball team. They've heavily got involved with esports and gaming. We help provide gaming camps, a safe haven for kids virtually via virtual camps, and that's been a pleasure. We've done stuff like Fortnite, Rocket League over the summer. I look towards you know, building some programming during the holidays because I know kids are just sitting around not doing anything, waiting on Santa to come. So, you know, waiting on Thanksgiving turkey. So we want to do some stuff around the holidays. I actually consult with Generation Esports. I helped develop a NBA 2K Pro Am League for high schools. So each high school has an option to have a five v five model, just like the NBA 2K league itself. And so that game is pretty much free for the next 2 years. They've committed, and I pushed them to commit to that because we wanted it to be accessible, just like you mentioned in the last question. And thirdly, you know, I'm a coordinator for Southern University Law Center, which has a mixed reality, virtual innovation, gaming and esports institute, and through that, we want to serve underserved communities with research careers, entrepreneur options, making relationships with industry, and how do we activate in those communities, and not just a one-off activation. How do we set up shop and stay there and teach those skill sets that the industry needs within the next 5 to 10 years? Really, and truly, they need them now, you know, because I had those discussions now. And me being tied to a university, we can actually understand, what the need is. It's the need is computer scientists, engineers, coders, developers. That's the big need now. I think everybody in esports is getting caught up with the streaming aspect, being on the main stage, and I think our youth need to understand that's only like your 1 percentile that makes it to the stage. Everybody can't be LeBron James of esports, and so how can I be a part of the ecosystem and make a six-figure living, be comfortable, take care of my family, and still be around something I love? I think it's a no-brainer for the majority of us.
Yeah. So you are obviously super embedded into the esports world, the scholastic esports world. So it might be difficult to imagine being back at square one. But for folks who are just starting out, what would you say is your number one piece of advice?
Get involved. Use the technology that's accessible. Like I said, I keep saying the same thing, but it's true. I'm not a broken record. Pick up your iPhone, pick up your tablet, pick up your Samsung. If you like me and didn't convert over to iPhone, but pick it up, download Twitter, man. Get involved. Like start having conversations. Be active. Like start engaging with the community. Build you a great LinkedIn page where it highlights your skill sets and your resume and what you're doing and how you're doing it. Be professional, be transparent, show what you're doing, show the process. And just get engaged. Just I would say ask yourself the hard questions, and then roll your sleeves up and just get to it. I mean, it's that type of industry, and it's an industry where I have relationships with professional players, GMs, coaches, CEOs. Everybody's trying to learn from each other. There's no cookie cutter way to get into this. There's no one blueprint. Everybody has different stories, come from different areas of different industries. We're all pretty much trying to help each other. And not to say it's any bad, cookies in a bunch, but for the most part, everybody wants to see this thing last. They want to see longevity. And to be quite frank with you, I don't think it's going anywhere no time soon.
Yeah. So what about folks who are maybe teaching right now and thinking, I want to start up an esports club or an esports team at my school? What advice would you have for somebody in those shoes?
So you do it. I talk to teachers across the nation every day that don't necessarily are not a gamer like myself. Like I was a gamer before getting into this, and so um, a lot of teachers are not, and so they see the impact that's on the students. I sit on the board for Varsity Esports Foundation, and so they have training, some free trainings you can go and grab. You have all kind of resources. Dell's been a great resource for a lot of my teacher friends and colleagues. It's just it's there. Like the internet is there. All you got to do is plug in. Hey, how to start an esports club in middle school, how to start an esports club in high school. Like use search engines. The information's out there. It's just a tap away and a click away from being downloaded and used. I mean, it's that easy. Survey your students. Try to figure out what games they're playing, what their interests are, what consoles they're on, whether they're PC, console, multiplayer 1v1 games. Like make that leap first. I would say survey your students, and then from there, it's just a matter of signing up for leagues, hosting game nights at your school, and just do a slow build. You don't have to deep dive like I did and just dive off into the ocean, but just take your time. I mean, kids want to feel included. And I said all the time, they think kids that are gamers are introverts, but they're only introverts because they don't have anything to gravitate to. Once they're in their element, they're not an introvert at all. They socialize just like regular people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we need to talk to our students about what they're doing, meet them where they are, right? And just get started. That
That's
sounds
it.
good, Chris. Thank you for being on today and sharing some of your story with us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us today on Focus on K-12 EdTech and the Education Experience. If you enjoyed today's show, please feel free to like, subscribe, and click the little bell so that you get notified whenever we post a new episode. Or reach out to me on Twitter at @dconopelco.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time as we focus on K-12.